I like you're detail oriented, and I like that about you.
There you go.
All right. One more time with feeling, 10 seconds. My friends, who am I? 10 seconds. My friends, I am Vivian McPeak, and this is Hemp Present. If you have feedback or would like to suggest a guest or topic for Hemp Present, email me at hemppresent@gmail.com. Sarah Frank has been a medical marijuana patient for 20 years and an activist for 19. She is the founding director of Moms for Marijuana International, the founder and OG liaison of Boise Hemp Fest, as well as the director of its Hemposium and Kidland, the founder of Legalize Idaho, Compassionate Idaho, and New Approach Idaho, and founder, family advocate for Fight for Lily Consulting and Advocacy, helping parents navigate and fight back against a corrupt child welfare system. I've invited Sarah back to the show today to update us on the important things she's involved in. Welcome once again, Sarah, to Cannabis Radio.
Thank you, Vivian. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. It's so nice to talk to you again. Let's just begin with you telling us a little bit about your history. You're an activist in Idaho, a state that's notoriously hostile to the cannabis culture. You've been fighting for cannabis legalization, among other things. I assume that it was your experiences as a medical cannabis patient that were the initial catalyst for you to become involved in activism and advocacy. Can you talk about what led up to your activism?
Yes, it was definitely medical. I had been dealing with a chronic illness for over 7 years without an actual diagnosis. The Idaho medical professionals told me it was all in my head and that I was addicted to the pain pills that they had been prescribing me and that I was merely just drug seeking. So being the stubborn-willed person that I am, I kind of told them all to kick rocks and eventually found cannabis through trial and error just by getting high with a friend one day. And it saved my life. It changed everything. And I started researching about marijuana and learned that pretty much everything we had ever been taught about it was a lie. And in Idaho, that was just a whole can of worms that led me on a 20-year-long journey that continues every single day. It saving my life is what spurred me to tell the world, shout it from the mountaintops. So here I am.
Despite a reported 60% of Idaho residents supporting cannabis legalization, your state's lawmakers are steadfastly resistant to cannabis as a potential revenue source. Idaho lawmakers have made multiple attempts to make it harder to legalize, while, as you know very well, activists have tried several times since 2012. The most recent attempt, I think, is in 2022 to legalize using a ballot initiative, which failed to reach the required number of signatures, even though in April 2021, Idaho state legislature rejected a proposal, a constitutional amendment that would have made any future legalization measures require the approval of 2/3 of the legislature. And in August of that year, the state Supreme Court struck down a new law that would have made it harder to get cannabis legalization initiatives on the ballot before voters. Did I get that right? And what do you think needs to happen to break the Idaho legalization logjam?
Yes. Yeah, you're very good. Very accurate. We actually began our first petition in 2010 was the Idaho Medical Choice Act. It was about leaving it up to, the citizens of Idaho and what they choose to put in their own bodies, which we thought would go over well in such a conservative state that's, about keeping the government out of our business. But no, I don't think it had to do with Idahoans not supporting cannabis. It really has to do with the support or lack thereof that we, need from the outside communities. Idaho is an island of prohibition. We are surrounded. Even Wyoming has a CBD law. As soon as their CBD for epileptic children bill hit the governor's desk, he signed it. Utah has a medical law. Canada, Washington, Oregon, California, I mean, we are surrounded. We are the last holdout in the West. And it's not because Idahoans don't want it. It's because the Idaho politicians don't want it. And those who have investments in their pretty much dying cash cow of courts and private prisons and, you know, the funds they get off of arresting nonviolent offenders.
Right.
We are notorious, Idaho, for being, like I said, the only state in the nation whose governor vetoed the CBD bill for epileptic children. Governor Butch Otter at the time received campaign contributions from GW. I'm sorry, can we start that?
Yep.
Our governor at the time, Idaho Butch Otter, received campaign contributions from GW Pharmaceuticals to implement a CBD trial. So he vetoed the CBD bill that would have provided an affirmative defense for Idaho parents that used it for their children, and implemented a trial for like 25 kids, which helped to push GW Pharmaceuticals Epidiolex, which is now FDA approved. So we can see, you know, it's a money thing for our politicians. And then for the people, you know, we've got two problems. We've got not enough outside support, not enough attention and focus and funding that would come from, you know, the national organizations that help to change laws like these. And then the other one is that most of the people in Idaho who consume cannabis won't register to vote and sign our petitions, mainly because they can go to Oregon, you know, and Washington and Montana and bring it back to Idaho. They don't care, mainly because they haven't been arrested yet. We do find that when people get arrested and have to deal with the system, that's when they start stepping forward.
Right. They get radicalized. And, you know, I know that initiatives require, citizen initiatives require a lot of money, actually, because to do it right, you have to be able to pay the signature gatherers, well, not to do it right, but to be successful a lot of times. And since legalization, quasi-legalization, I have a trouble with that word, commoditization, money's just evaporated. It's like there's more money in cannabis than there's ever been. And all of a sudden, nobody wants to give any of it to legalization efforts. Have you found that?
Right, because it's already legal. Why would we do that? We find the same thing when it comes to with our Moms for Marijuana network, that when even in the legal states, you know, people don't want to protest anymore or rally or try to make changes because they think it's already done. Legalization has already happened, even though recreational legalization is not the end. You know, we as mothers really, really, really promote that we need to make sure that cannabis prohibition never happens again. And that's in all forms across the world. And our job is not done until the entire world is legalized, and not just legalized, free. You know, legalization comes with regulation.
And to me, always legalization meant there wasn't 40,000 people in jails and prisons anymore, right? That it wasn't
there are
federally illegal, right? So it's like, I've had this argument, and a lot of people go, what do you mean it's not legal? You know, this could all go away in the stroke of a pen. We could get the next president could come in and say, this is all over, right?
Right, just like they did in Oregon with their decriminalization of all drugs. They just came in with legislation and reversed it all. I voted for that.
They didn't fund it. They didn't fund it right. They did a half-assed version of it. It was set up to fail, right? And then now you're going to have the prohibitionists saying, oh, well, we tried harm reduction. It didn't work because it was never done right, right? And this is how they operate, right? It's a starve the beast type of thing. I want to talk about something that has been successful and is working, and that's you are the founder of the Boise Hemp Fest, which Seattle Hemp Fest is proud to be associated with, and which is coming up in just a few weeks. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the event and what it was like for you to launch, permit, and produce an Idaho event that's inherently controversial by its nature? How did that all come about?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. It all began back in 2010, around the same time that we had our petition, or our first petition, and we wanted to provide a venue that would attract a lot of people to come sign our petition. So that is the primary focus, change Idaho's laws. But at the same time, you know, with Moms for Marijuana and being a parent, and for me, it's all been about education. You know, there's so much about cannabis that people don't know, even in the cannabis community.
Mhm.
There's so much history. There's so much stuff to learn every single day. I can't keep up. I'm sure you can't keep up either. And,
No.
Idaho is set in a 1990s dare propaganda kind of mindset when it comes to cannabis. And it's because they don't know anything about it. They think they know, but what they know is lies that have been passed down from generation to generation since the 30s, and all based in fear. Be afraid for our families, protect our children. What about the children? And that's what we ask. What about the children that cannabis helps, and the children who are being removed from their families, and the parents who are going to jail so the children are losing their parents?
Mhm.
What about them? And so it was all about providing that education, providing access to the petition, and being, a protest to Idaho's archaic laws. And back in 2010, we did not want to call it hemp. We were so scared to even use the word hemp that we
Right.
would have, people attacking us for it, that we called it the Idaho Hope Fest. Hope
Right.
standing for hemp offers people everything. And
Nice.
that first year, we had 35 police officers show up and just stand in a circle outside of our stage area.
Waiting for something to happen. I got to go to a quick break, but hold that thought because I want to talk more about the Boise Hemp Fest. We'll be right back with the second segment with
Okay.
Sarah Frank. All right, you're rocking it like usual. We're just going to.
I get rambling.
Oh, it's good. It's good. You're rambling the right stuff. All right, we're just going to drive back in 10 seconds. We're back with Sarah Frank. Sarah, we were talking about the Idaho Hemp Fest, the Boise Hemp Fest, and you're talking about it's hard to keep up with everything cannabis. And there's a time when I saved every single news article that came out that I saw about cannabis, and that would be virtually impossible now. My feed, my MSN feed is just littered with, well, there's actually a stunning amount of, prohibitionist disinformation coming out, as well as stuff about cannabis stocks and, the best, way to enhance your high, and even silly things. There's just a million articles about cannabis that's really kind of broken free. What can people expect to see and hear at the Boise Hemp Fest this year? Tell us about this year's event.
Well, it's the same with us when it comes to providing the education about cannabis. There's just so much, what do we choose? HempFest is, we model it after your wonderful event. That is, you're our parents, our mentors, and we're trying to bring the same type of educational platform to Boise, So we have 12 hours of live music. This year we have 2 stages finally, with, I believe, 10 different entertainers on each stage. We have belly dancers, fire dancers, musicians from all over the country, and I think this year we even have a comedian. Then we also have our vendor village. We have over 150 food and local vendors that make up vendor village and the Munchie Market. We like to play on the stoner words, of course. And then we also have our Hemposium, which we've added the element of education in the form of displays that just fill up the entire tent.
Nice.
And I would say we have quite a few dozen of them now, and it keeps going. I have a list for every year that I make new displays, and it just keeps getting longer and longer instead of shorter and shorter as I make the displays. So that's a fun place. We started doing panels like your Hemposium. This year, we will have quite a few good keynote speakers. We have Dana Beal will be speaking about ibogaine and his arrest in Idaho recently. I believe Paul Stanford will be coming from the THCS clinics in Oregon. Don Skacke will be coming from Washington. We have Freedom Grow, who shows up, and they're the ones that really support our cannabis prisoners of war that are currently incarcerated. I'm sorry, I'm going to take a 10-second break. I had a fire yesterday and my lungs aren't doing good.
Oh, no.
So I'm not sure if you can hear that in my voice. So I'll restart. Not restart, but 10 seconds, right?
Yep.
Okay. We also have, that's unique to Boise Hemp Fest is our Kidland. And that stems from, me being part of Moms for Marijuana and as an activist for the last 20 years, hauling around my own kids to cannabis events. And there was always a lack of things for the kids to do. Everything's focused on the adults and the recreational use and nothing that was kid oriented. And there's so many children who are part of families that cannabis is just a common part of their life. It's normal. And just like, families that drink beer or wine and take other medicines. And so my kids always, were very bored at cannabis events or weren't allowed because they were minors. And so we've really focused on building a kid section of our event that is very friendly. We have local sponsors that provide free activities, including Moms for Marijuana, and Treasure Valley Smoking Hot Mamas, which is another Idaho group, mom cannabis group. We also have Idaho Mary Janes that come around. And it's just filled with arts and crafts, bounce houses, games. There's even a rest area for parents who can go get a free massage, and a breastfeeding tent for those new mamas. We also have prize giveaways at 420 and 710. And since we're having 2 stages this year, I think there's going to be a lot of prizes. And then our sponsors we have a bunch of local dispensaries from Ontario, Oregon that come over and help to educate the attendees about, the different aspects and help kind of get people familiarized with how dispensaries work in Oregon versus, the black market in Idaho, where you get to go buy a bag behind a pharmacy when you'd rather walk into that pharmacy. So it's a fun day in the park.
Man. Yes, I mean, you've really got all the bells and whistles. I mean, you even have a maternity tent, which is amazing. I found that there is invariably a vibrant and robust resistance movement in places with the most oppression and injustice. And I have family in Boise, and I have found the city to have a pretty strong, hip, progressive counterculture. What kind of community support has the Boise Hemp Fest experienced?
The city is great. We work with the city every single year in the special events committee, the mayor's office, the Boise Police Department, fire department, all that goes into throwing a festival. Yep. And we just love them and they love us. And the relationship with the city is amazing. It's what I have found in my years of activism and dealing with the different levels of law enforcement in Idaho. Like, for instance, when I tried to smoke a joint on the Capitol steps, I dealt with the Idaho State Police. When we had a smoke out in downtown Boise, I dealt with the Boise Police. But I've also dealt with, all over the state, different local law enforcement. The law enforcement, we get a lot of support. It surprises me how much support from law enforcement. It really is just politicians who are against it.
That was our experience at Seattle Hemp Fest. And it wasn't all in the very beginning. It wasn't like that, but towards the end, we would go to these big special event committee meetings with the city, and you've got 12 city departments on this giant table. And it's funny because towards the end, it was the cops that were defending us all the time against bullshit. And it's because they worked with us, they knew us, they saw us in action. They also learned a lot from our event. Do you have cops present at your event?
Yes. Well, like I was saying, that first year we had like 35 Boise police officers show up and stand in a circle in the park. And it was our first event, very few people, it was brand new. And it really just gave Russ Belville the opportunity to just educate them.
And man, that's
the
what
next
he does.
Year, and that is what he does. That's my
Russ
side reason. Yeah, that's my side secret reason for hosting Hemp Fest is to give Russ Belville a microphone. That was why it started. But, life moves on and we all move on with our lives and have other things we've got to focus on. So my focus continues to be Boise and Idaho. And for the next the next year, we didn't get policemen at all. But then when I did the first Boise Hemp Fest, which was in 2016, we had one officer stop by. He rode in on a bicycle and he was looking around, and I went walking up to him and I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he's all, "Oh, good. It looks like you're doing great here. we're busy in the adjoining park, which is Ann Morrison Park in Boise, because it was Tour de Fat, which is, if people don't know what that is a festival where people dress up in costumes and ride around on bicycles while they get drunk.
Mhm.
So the officers were more focused on the alcohol use than our little tiny educational festival. And then over the years, working with the city, we finally had to add a beer garden to our event because Idahoans like to drink. And that is the one thing people kept saying that was missing. You know, where's the beer garden? Where's the beer garden? So we added one with a local Edge Brewing company who's actually helped us out a lot with legalization efforts in the past. And when we added them, we had to start hiring police officers to work our events. And so we get 3 of them every year. And they
they're
are
listening
great.
to
They
everything
are,
coming off your stage, right?
yes. And we
They're being
provide them with a
educated.
hospitality tent. Yes. And we give them this tent that has snacks and tables and chairs and a place to rest for the day. And we provide the Northwest Leaf magazines in that tent so that they have something to look at and maybe learn a thing or two.
Wes
And
Abney
yeah, they
Friends.
just,
Yep.
yeah, they just, you know, most people, when it comes down to the person in Idaho, the average citizen, even the police officers or politicians, judges, attorneys, prosecutors, most people support it. And it's really quite interesting.
They're not getting kickbacks from the pharmaceutical industry and the prison industrial complex and what have you. We got to go to another break, Sarah. So we'll be right back with Sarah Frank for the final segment. Don't go anywhere. All right. Oh man.
I'm sorry for my coughing. I'm talking now.
It's okay, man. So the good news on your throat is that this next segment will only be about 5.5 minutes long. It'll be about half as long as the other segment. So we're almost done. You're rocking it, of course. So we're just going to dive right in and get this over with. 10 seconds.
Okay.
We're back for our final segment with Sarah Frank. Sarah, you mentioned that Dana Beal is going to be speaking at the Boise Hemp Fest. He is the infamous 77-year-old New York-based original Yippie, or an organizer of the global marijuana marches, a crusading ibogaine proponent who was recently busted in Idaho outside of his broken down vehicle with 56 pounds of weed. He is OG, man. He's been charged with trafficking cannabis. I got a call from Dana in Idaho shortly after he was arrested. He wanted to know if I knew any cannabis activists in the state, and just so happened that I did. And it was you. What can you tell me about what happened after that?
Well, Dana is now on a mission. I relate to that feeling, you know, that I think Idaho has one of their biggest problems is they arrest the wrong people. They start messing with the wrong people they don't know about, you know, and people who have connections and influence and followers. And I've seen it happen with CPS cases where they arrest the wrong person's kid and it blows up in their face and there's a giant outcry. And I've seen it in court cases like this. And Dana is going to make some waves, I think, in Idaho, especially with his ibogaine stance. Mm-hmm. Idaho's biggest problem right now is the fentanyl epidemic, you know, along with the rest of the country, of course. But it's always been a problem. And that fentanyl epidemic is coming from an opiate epidemic that I was part of, you know, 20 years ago when they first wanted to give me morphine implants instead of letting me use cannabis. And that's what the state of Idaho says that people need to do, is try all the other options available.
All
and
the
for
lethal
me,
options, right? Let's try all the dangerous, addictive stuff.
Yep.
And then the last resort is the relatively non-therapeutic herb.
Right. Only because it's illegal. And for me, my last legal attempt to try for my bladder condition is to remove the bladder from my body. And, you know, yeah, no, I think I'm just going to smoke weed. Thanks, Idaho. But so that makes me an Idaho refugee. I live 9 miles outside of the state border into Washington. I've lived 20 miles into Oregon. But I come back, and this situation with Dana Beal is going to open some eyes, I believe, and the ibogaine thing will definitely attract some attention, especially from people who have lost people to the opioid epidemics. And so we have a court support plan for him. I'm going to pause right there and restart. I'm sorry, my voice is like going away.
It's okay. I understand. And you've had a fire and you've got the wrong kind of smoke in your lungs.
Well,
gave Dana...
no,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This has nothing to do with our little show, but it stems from mold, which my lungs are not healed from, and then I had a fire. But yes, so 10 seconds.
They've given Dana a megaphone, right? And he knows how to use it, right? And that's their mistake. You know, I actually am planning to have Dana. I hope to have him on next week, actually, as my guest.
That would be wonderful. So we're going to do a court support rally for him in Gooding, Idaho. And I say that with that tone because the further east from Boise that you get, it's like going back in time when it comes to cannabis policies. And they even say the word marijuana like they're in a Reefer Madness movie. Like it's this scary, scary thing we need to be afraid of. And yeah, Dana with a megaphone connected to the right people in Idaho. I see this being an interesting journey for us all.
Well, Sarah, our time is waning down and we have about a minute left. You're amazing. And I think I said this last time, the world needs more Sarah Franks. What final thoughts would you like to leave us with?
That everybody needs to petition for Vivian McPeak to come check out Boise Hemp Fest.
I will sign that
We would
petition.
love to have you.
I would sign that petition.
We would love to have you someday. I know someday soon we will. Yes,
I vow before my days are over that I am going to come and enjoy the incredible, every wonderful aspect. You have got such a great event and you're in the belly of the beast, man. You're taking the fight to where it has to happen and you have thrived under pressure. And it's just really impressive. BoiseHempFest.org. I think the event is scheduled for Saturday, May 11th this year. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
And
day before Mother's Day.
Yes, and I encourage everybody to go check it out and support it. Support it, man. Even if you're in Madagascar listening to this. Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show. It's always such a pleasure.
Always an honor.
So much love and
Thank
respect to you.
You too.
That concludes this installment of Hemp Present on Cannabis Radio. When it comes to prohibition, you've got the right not to remain silent. Activism requires a voice. Find your voice, speak up for justice because resistance is fertile. The Hemp Present intro music is 7 Mile Beach by Joanne Rand, and the outro tune is Take Back the Plant by Stickerbush. Stay strong.